One of the things I knew we wanted to talk about this week on the podcast was the rash of pitching injuries so far here in 2024. And really goes back to 2023, but even just in the last week, Miami's Yuri Perez, one of the really good young pitchers in baseball, is going to be on the shelf for the rest of the year. You've got, of course, Atlanta Spencer Strider, which we've talked about on this podcast a lot because of how it directly impacts the Phillies. Cleveland's Shane Bieber. But even going back to last year, you've got Jacob deGrom, you've got Shohei Ohtani, Sandy Alcantara, Shane McClanahan, Felix Bautista, our own Andrew Painter, of course, if you're not looking at MLB players. A number of other pro players have all had elbow injuries or had to undergo Tommy John surgery, and it's the talk of baseball right now. And so we're going to talk some Phillies with our next guest, but I wanted to talk to Michael Baumann of Fangraphs real quick to get his thoughts on the rash of pitching injuries we've seen and some other baseball news going around in major leagues. Follow him on Twitter at Michael Baumann. That's with 2 N's at the end.
Yes.
Michael, yes, very important, the 2 N's, because otherwise some strange poor Michael Baumann in Cedar Rapids, Iowa is going to be very, very upset that you're tweeting at him.
There's a German oncologist whose tweets I get a lot.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I'm sure those are interesting. But anyway, welcome back to Hittin Season. It's good to talk to you, buddy. And I know a lot of what Major League Baseball, what the players union, what players are talking about, and fans, of course, is like, what is going on here with the pitcher injuries? We've known that pitching is an unnatural thing for a long time. Pitchers get hurt, arms get hurt, elbows get hurt, shoulders get hurt. It's one of the reasons teams have always been reluctant to hand out big, long mega deals to pitchers. For a long time, the Phillies had a standing policy never to give a pitcher more than a 5-year deal for the very reason that their arms break down. But it seems like we're dealing with something different right now, isn't it?
It definitely seems that way. I think that just the sheer number of, you mentioned all those guys. You did mention Framber Valdez, who went on the IL with elbow discomfort too. I'm feeling pretty relieved that only one of my preseason Cy Young picks is currently experiencing elbow discomfort, because I know some people got completely wiped out.
Mm-hmm.
It feels ridiculous because of so many pitchers going on the IL at the same time after so much talk about trying to prevent this basically by reducing pitcher workloads. And it seems that we're at, I don't actually know that we're having more injuries this year than before.
Yeah.
I think that a lot of this discourse is based on 2 assumptions that I don't necessarily, that I haven't seen empirical backing for. The first of which is that we are experiencing an uptick in Tommy John surgeries or torn UCLs based on, or relative to this point in the year over year. Travis Sawchik the Score had some information on that this afternoon. So we'll see. But this, regardless of whether that's true or whether this is just normal, this is a problem. And what we've seen from the union is the second assumption that I find really specious, which is that the pitch clock is to blame. And I don't know, I could take up the entire 15 minutes you've earmarked for this conversation on what all that means and what the various causes are. But what it boils down to is the best way to pitch is really, really bad for you, even more so than the normal way. And there's not, to a certain extent, no amount of workload management is going to protect even the most durable pitchers. And this is sort of coming to a head after, I want to say at the very, very least 15 years of consistent development of guys throwing max effort. And so we're looking for, what is the solution? Is there a way for pitchers to change the way they throw? Is there a way to tweak roster rules? Is there a medical advance? It might have to be a medical advance, because the way things are going now is the best way for everybody. It's good for the teams because they're winning. It's good for the players because they want to win their individual games. And then, the way I saw it put with somebody like Spencer Strider, like, oh no, he's going to miss a season in which he was favored to win the Cy Young probably. But by maxing out, he went from a scrawny college kid to a guy with a guaranteed $75 million contract. Even a guy who gets Tommy John, blows out his elbow, doesn't pitch in the majors again. It has like one full season as a reliever, makes $700,000. And that's just such a huge financial windfall to these guys that I struggle to think of a disincentive to get pitchers to stop doing this constant search for velocity and spin and max effort on every single pitch, which is the only way you pitch. Because if you don't do that, you're going to get rocked because the hitters are so good.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. You can't throw 91, 92 and try to live on the edges anymore. Like you will absolutely get nuked in today's baseball. And I've seen minor league pitchers on Twitter talking about that very thing. You know, if I had to choose, I'll run the risk of Tommy John surgery, because the only way I'm getting on a big league roster is if I'm throwing 96, 97. If I try to be durable and throw 93, 94, and I have a guys are hitting 280 against me instead of 220, then I'm not getting called up to the big leagues, and there are so few jobs available. So I get it, and if the pitchers are kind of like, I'd rather take my chances, then you really just kind of have to roll with it. And to your point, you mentioned the Travis Salchik thing. I actually had that in front of me, and through the first 100 days of the calendar year, right now we have no more Tommy John surgeries than we have had in previous seasons. I think he said there were 16 total pro pitchers, 9 of whom are major leaguers. Last year at this time, there were 23 pro pitchers. Now, only 2 of them were major leaguers, so it didn't seem as many. The year before, it was 3 major leaguers, but 28 pro pitchers. In 2021, it was 47 pro pitchers and 11 big leaguers 100 days into the year where you had Tommy John surgery. Really, you look at the numbers, 2014 seems to be when the real big boom happened with Tommy John surgeries, at least as far as pro pitchers are concerned. But I think that's the other thing you're mentioning here is this goes beyond pros. It goes beyond college. It goes back to high school. That's what a lot of this is being talked about. Pitchers are being taught and bred in high school to throw, and throw as hard as you can, and you got to get the spin rates up. And so you've got to unwind a whole lot there in order to see any kind of real change here.
Yeah, I'll give you one illustration that proves, 1, how far back in the past this problem is, and 2, how early it starts, which is Jeff Passan's The Arm, which came out in 2016. And he didn't just talk to professional or college pitchers or pitching coaches or doctors. He dealt with Perfect Game, which ranks kids as young as elementary school. And you try to get on those travel ball teams when you're 10, 11, 12 years old, sometimes even younger. Those kids are throwing 74 miles an hour with middle school bodies, and just like the connective tissue in the human arm, it's just not meant to handle those kinds of stresses. And those guys get ranked highly, they get college scholarships, they get big signing bonuses. And if they blow out after making, $1 million in the major leagues, so be it. Because a lot of them, they would rather take that chance and chase that dream. And so that's why I think there is nothing Major League Baseball can do to do more than chip away around the edges. Because nothing short of, there's a, I don't know, I'll borrow an illustration from the study of climate change. There is nothing that incentives or tax credits can do to stop climate change. You need an illiberal top-down, nationwide, or global in that case, solution on climate change. Nothing short of governmental intervention is going to stop this. And even then it's going to take 20 years. So I like that there is a focus on prevention and mitigation. I do think that there are the medical advances that have been made just even since the arm came out have been enormous. Because as much as this is a crisis now, imagine if Tommy John success rates were what they were 15 years ago. Imagine if the primary repair internal brace procedure hadn't been invented. And so I don't want to get into a situation where we're looking for a medical or biomechanical cargo cult to come in just, have outpatient surgery that you're in the hospital for 45 minutes and you throw next week with an adamantium UCL. I don't want to have to wait for that, but the medicine is getting better. And this is now a situation where this is not a career ending injury anymore. Now, we're still not there for shoulder injuries, but, I was looking at, because I knew somebody was, people were going to bring up, Nolan Ryan threw 5,000 innings, throwing 95 with a big curveball. And he's the outlier that proves the rule. You go look at Gary Nolan, Pat Zachary, Don Gullett, all these young, that's just from one team, the Cincinnati Reds in the 70s. Guys used to have they used to get sore elbow at 24 and their career would be over.
Yeah.
And that's not the case anymore. Now you're seeing guys who can come back from Tommy John twice or even 3 times and still pitch effectively in the major leagues. So, I wonder if it's turned it into more of a chronic condition than well, it's still an acute condition. Chronic is not the right word in case you have any doctors out there, but it's a more manageable condition. It's not a death sentence for pitchers' careers. Right. And so I think that's, if we're looking for good news in this situation, that's it.
Yeah, and I think it's funny if you read the arm, even some of the high school kids are like, can I get Tommy John surgery? A lot of times the parents, if there's any kind of issue with it, well, let's just get the surgery, because the thinking is like, some pitchers pitch, but they throw harder after the Tommy John surgery. You're not getting the point here. You don't want to go under the knife if you can at all avoid it. And I think the thing right now that seems to be an issue is that you've got the players union, as you mentioned, really just focusing all their attention on the pitch clock in their statement about this. They're not talking about the strain of velocity. And I know Dr. Keith Meister, who's the Texas Rangers team doctor, he is pounding the drum that the sweepers that these guys are throwing now and the power changeups that these guys are throwing now, he says you can tell by the MRI whether or not this guy's been throwing a sweeper based on the tear. And I got to believe Dr. Meister, who now appears to be replacing Dr. James Andrews as the foremost authority on this.
Now we've got multiple Dr. James Andrewses, so
that's true.
That shows you how much of a booming industry this is.
That's right. They're multiplying and cloning themselves because of the need here.
Let's not shortchange Dr. Neil
Elatrache. Yep, exactly. That's right. He's still getting his share too. And so, but I mean, it does seem as though there are a couple of different factors at work here, and each side is kind of picking and choosing a little bit what it is they want to do. So what it is they want to blame this on. So that's not helpful, Michael, is it? I mean, like, it's not helpful that these two sides seem more interested in kind of placing a blame on it than getting a fix. And I think, maybe the pitch clock is partially responsible for. We just can't say right now. There needs to be more data, I think, before we can really say what it is and then find a cure for it.
And this was not something that was unanticipated with the pitch clock. I can point you to Craig Goldstein and Patrick Dubuque wrote the year before it was implemented about it would make it impossible to do this kind of constant max effort style of pitching if you don't have 30 seconds to recuperate between pitches. And their hope, and my hope then, was that, well, maybe it'll dissuade pitchers from doing that. And no, just the opposite. They're just going to do it until they get tired. And when you get tired, you get hurt. And like, at some point, this is on the players. Yeah. And, I'll say this is going to sound, here's your soundbite. Even if the pitch clock is contributing significantly to elbow injuries, that's not a good enough reason for me to get rid of it. Because it's changed the way that the game is played for the better. And it's on the players to adapt. And the game needs to be for the fan, for the consumer, to make it we don't owe it to the players to indulge every antisocial, anti-competitive innovation they come up with. Like, the rules of every game and every sport change when somebody gets an edge and turns the game into exploiting a loophole. And that's nothing more than this style of pitching is.
So I guess last question on this, then we could talk about the Phillies and actually talk about some stuff on the field here. Like, at what point does it get to a situation where baseball feels compelled to quote unquote do something, right? I mean, like we've been saying, pitchers have gotten hurt for forever. There are still lots of good pitchers in baseball. Yes, some of the big names have gotten hurt, and it stinks, but big name pitchers have gotten hurt before, and the sport has moved on and survived, and other people come up and they take their place. And, we just cross our fingers every day that Zach Wheeler you don't see us quote in the paper like, my elbow's feeling, every time out now when I hear that he's throwing a sweeper, like last year when he started throwing the sweeper, I'm like, oh, please don't throw that anymore. It's what are you going to do? I mean, it's just, I guess at what point does this reach a critical mass that, I don't know, that players do decide to change their behavior, that they do decide to start throwing 90, 92 miles an hour, 93 miles an hour to try and elongate their career rather than punctuate it with high velocity and power breaking stuff?
I feel like I'd have a better feel on how to answer that question if I knew what there was to be done.
Yeah.
Because right now throwing 92, 93 when you're capable of reaching back for 97 is not going to elongate your career.
Right.
And so unless there's some breakthrough in technique or medicine that makes it sustainable to pitch this way for a long time, I don't know what the solution is. And like I said earlier, I don't know who isn't being served by the current state of affairs apart from individual pitchers and hitters, I guess. So what would I like to see? I would like to see some collaborative effort by the union and the league. Until then, I'm kind of, and again, like there isn't enough trust. Like the league has broken trust with the union enough times. I don't know if they have enough credit in the bank to sell the players on something like this, but some kind of like collaborative scientific study to try to find an actual solution. But anything beyond that or anything until that is just posturing to me.
Yeah. I'm going to get your quick thoughts on the Phillies, of course. Big Phils fan you are. Yeah. And the Phillies took 2 out of 3 from the Cardinals after taking 2 out of 3 from the Nationals. They win their first 2 road series of the season for the first time since 2011. This team now 6-6 as they enter a weekend series against the Pirates back at Citizens Bank Park. Been kind of an up and down start to the season. At 500, I guess it's there are worse places to be. Certainly, you look at some of these other teams who have really struggled coming out of the gate. 6-6 you can live with, but it's been a hard watch. This Phillies team has been a little bit of a difficult watch, and that's always the case when you're getting good pitching, but the offense just continues to squander scoring opportunities. Michael, what's your assessment of this team through the first couple of weeks?
I think I have a hard time identifying anything systemic. Like you said, they have pitched well. When some of their aggregate numbers have faltered, it's been because of, I don't want to blame Connor Brogdon entirely. He's been through enough the past couple of weeks, but just a couple bad outlier mop-up outings have really dragged the team's entire stats down. I still have immense faith in this pitching staff, even without Taijuan Walker and Orion Kerkering, who have not debuted yet. I think Spencer Turnbull was a really, really smart pickup. He was really good for the Tigers when he was younger, and just his first start gives me a lot of confidence. The offense will come. And if it doesn't, like if Harper and Schwarber and Trey Turner and the guys you spent $1 billion to hit, if they don't hit, then you're screwed anyway. There's nothing you can do about it. I think the guy that I'm most interested in seeing how he adjusts the season is Bryson Stott, who was a very, very good hitter last year, but had kind of an unusual approach and wasn't exploiting his strength and power to the fullest extent. We talk about this is the thing that makes Bryce Harper special is selective aggression. Yeah. He swings and misses a lot, but he hits for a relatively high average because he just hits the crap out of the ball whenever he does make contact. And Stott's the complete opposite. He's a guy who makes a lot of contact, but doesn't make a lot of hard contact. And so to the extent, like, you forget how big he is. Like, he's probably not as big as the 6'3" he's listed as, but he's a big, strong dude who ought to be hitting the ball harder than he is. And to the extent that he struggled this year, I wonder if it's because he struggled to put those adjustments into place. So I don't know. Like, I saw people talking about like fire Kevin Long on Twitter today. I think
that's a hot topic. Yeah.
Like, man, I think the last Eagles season really messed some people up.
It did.
But if you're going to look at this like a football season, this is like still the beginning of like the middle of the first quarter of the first game. In terms, if this were an NFL season, so everything will even out. I think you just need to be chill. I was going to say watch the Sixers. That's not.
No, you don't
really
do that.
compatible with being chill at any point in the past 10 years. Yeah. Go for a walk. If the Phillies are stressing you out, go for a walk, go get a coffee, go spend time with your spouse, your partner, and your kids, play with your dog, come back to it when you're in a good headspace, because the team is still figuring things out. They're still adjusting to this new season. They're still, coping with everything that happened to them last October, and I have confidence that they'll sort things out. And just the fact that their pitching staff is healthy, it gives them a huge leg up on, for instance, the Braves. Like I feel a lot better about the Phillies' ability to contend in the NL East this season. I thought they had no chance, but with the Braves not having Strider and Max Fried, I don't know. We'll see. I'm going to write about him later in the week, I think. like those are 2 torpedoes below the waterline for a team that I thought was the best in baseball. So be patient. That's what I would say to people who are feeling the ups and downs of this early season.
Yeah, it's hard because I would be obviously the offense kind of stalled in the NLCS last year, like it stalled in the World Series the year before that, and this is just a streaky team. It's an up and down team. They get super hot together. This is not a lineup where 4 guys are hot, 4 guys are cold, and they all kind of change and then go. A different 4 guys are hot, and so you can kind of keep the machine rolling. Mm-hmm. All 8 or 9, these guys are one collect. They're like a grove of aspens, all connected by the same root system. When one isn't doing well, they all seem to fall apart and not
might be true. I think there are times when Schwarber or Harper or Brandon Marsh increasingly has carried this offense. I think if you're still feeling the pain of losing the World Series in 22 and the NLCS last year, what I would say, it's so early I forgot what the playoff rounds are called. What I would say is the most common outcome for a team that builds a championship caliber roster and does everything right, the most common outcome for that team is they don't win the World Series. So I think that's an important thing to bear in mind if you're looking for big sweeping changes 2 weeks into a season after they've made back-to-back trips to the NLCS. I don't know. Like I said, if I were in charge, I wouldn't draw any conclusions about anybody except maybe the Marlins and the Rockies until Memorial Day.
Yeah. Well, it's tough to watch Trey Turner and Kyle Schwarber miss 2-0 fastballs right down the middle and just for the entire lineup to look like they're struggling. But I think my takeaway has been I would rather the hitters be struggling than the pitchers be struggling. And with the pitchers pitching well, that bodes better for their long-term success because you do believe that the hitters are going to come around. So we'll see whether this team can kind of get some runs across the board against a Pirates team that's looking frisky here at the early start of the season. We'll see.
That's how you know it's early in the season. Yeah. The Pirates are. I didn't see if they won tonight, but they were 9-2 in their first 11 games. So that's frisky. Not a sign that it's too early to panic. I don't know what is.
That's the very definition of small sample size when the Pirates are 7 games over 500. Make sure you're reading Michael Baumann's work over in Fangraphs. And hey, if you're into cycling, Michael has a Substack on the subject, wheeliesports.substack.com. I don't know if we have any cycling fans, Michael, but I thought I'd give that a plug for you. Yeah,
I was going to plug that. I will say, if you're looking for something specific in Fangraphs, I talked to Jeff Hoffman last week in a story that ran earlier this week about the entire bullpen structure. So, Phillies fans specifically might not be that interested in like my take on the AL Central that came out, but I think you should read the Hoffman and bullpen story that came out a couple of days ago.
It's over at fangraphs.com. Make sure you check out all of Michael's great stuff there. Michael, thank you for coming back on Hittin' Season. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, anytime.